Nocturnal Animals is a 2016 psychological thriller by Tom Ford, and it's based on Austin Wright's 1993 novel, Tony and Susan. Now, there are several differences as well as similarities between the film and the book, and their comparison will form the basis of this video. Both novel and film are about a married woman, Susan, who receives the manuscript from her ex-husband asking her to read it, and in various ways, this manuscript sort of causes her life to unravel. One obvious difference is that in the novel, the work Edward presents to Susan matches the medium we are experiencing, whereas in the film, it obviously does not. Imagine how different the film would have been if instead of sending Susan his manuscript, Edward is an aspiring filmmaker who sends her his first feature film. This makes a big difference because in the film, we're not experiencing Edward's novel directly, but rather through Susan's mind. In the film, Susan immediately imagines the fictional protagonist, Tony, as Edward, and arguably imagines herself as a fictional wife and mother. The film then makes several additional connections between Tony and Edward, the main one being their alleged weakness.
Don't do this. He's too weak for you. The things you love about him now are the things you'll hate.
Which, interestingly, doesn't show up in the novel. Because of the casting choices, the connection between Edward and Tony seems natural, but in the book, it's open to interpretation. There are actually much stronger similarities between Tony and Susan, and perhaps the title of the novel is inviting comparison. Both are teachers, Susan being an English teacher in high school, and Tony a professor of mathematics. In the film, of course, Susan is a successful and somewhat glamorous artist, which gives much more credence to the Edward is weak theme. Book Susan has a much more stable, even bourgeois job, and this bourgeoisness is actually something the novel focuses on in lieu of the weakness thread. It's another point of connection between her and Tony. In his novel, Edward pokes fun at Tony's over-reliance on his career to give him his sense of identity. Tony also relies heavily on civilization to feel secure, something the film maybe implies but does not fully state. Likewise, Susan is obsessed with the idea of civilization and showing other people that she's civilized. There are also immediate parallels. For example, Susan would be reading a chapter on how Tony is being indecisive, then she'll stop and think about her own indecisiveness. There are a few things in the film that are not in the novel. Susan's mom does not disapprove of Edward. In fact, she's supportive of their relationship. And this dramatic reveal, which I'm not going to mention because it's a spoiler, that doesn't happen in the novel either.
I did something horrible to him.
Though there are many things in the novel that are not in the film. First, Edward has remarried, a woman named Stephanie, and Susan actually knows about her. This is not in the film and actually greatly affects how one might interpret the ending. The fictional character Tony also has a woman. After his wife and daughter's murder, he sexually pursues one of his students, Louise Germain, and feels extremely guilty about his newfound lust. I think this is paralleled in the novel with Susan's feelings of guilt towards her affair with Arnold. When Tony finally has sex with Louise in the novel, the event is described in an ominous and animalistic way, almost like an out-of-body experience. Perhaps Edward's novel within the novel is entitled Nocturnal Animals because he's making a statement about Susan's nature.
My ex-husband used to call me a nocturnal animal.
She and Tony are obsessed with appearing civilized with their respectable jobs and respectable etiquette, but at night, or in the dark when no one's watching, their animal nature takes over, as represented by sex and violence. By the way, something interesting to think about is that Tony loses his family in the woods, and in the novel, Edward goes on a month-long writing journey in the woods, and it's during this time that Susan cheats on him with Arnold, so in a sense, she loses him in the woods as well. Another parallel made obvious in the novel, but not in the film, is the detective telling Tony that he expected too much of him. And in real life, Edward says the exact same thing to Susan, that he expected too much of her. The detective tries to solve the problem, but can't possibly bring his family back. And in the novel, Edward actually tries to salvage the relationship even after finding out about the affair. Another possible interpretation could be that Tony never felt comfortable enough to stop doing things by the book in order to trust the detective's plan, and this hesitancy really caused a very botched revenge. Meanwhile, Susan never trusted Edward's dream of becoming a writer and instead kept trying to convince him to follow a more stable career path. And finally, about the ending, in the novel, it's at least confirmed that Edward did not show up and has left the city before ever meeting Susan, which is in keeping with this line.
When you love someone, you have to be careful with it. You might never get it again.
I think one of the themes the film wanted to convey was that of finality, as shown in the definitive end of the relationship, the abortion, and the futile and circuitous legal investigation, and of course, Edward not showing up in the end. The novel's themes are less definite and harder to pinpoint, but in both mediums, Nocturnal Animals is about the stories we tell ourselves and others, and the mystique of artistic expression. How much does art overlap with its author's personal truth? Does it matter? And how does the audience's interpretation of it reveal something about themselves? Thanks for watching. Hey guys! I hope you enjoyed that video, and I'm back! I'm not dead. I'm sorry it took me like 2.5 months to update, but I swear it's not because it takes me 2 months to read a novel. Life has been really busy, but now that it's kind of settling down, I think I will have more time to make these videos. So I hope you enjoyed them, and yeah, I hope to come out with more videos faster this time soon, and I'll see you next time.